Jim. Good morning. Thanks for making time to talk with us today.
Good morning.
New year, lots going on. We had a busy year at AASHTO last year, so I kind of want to ask you about how 2025 went and what we're looking at for 2026. And we come to you to provide that kind of national perspective on transportation here. So I want to ask you about AASHTO's 2025. What do you see as sort of the biggest accomplishments for the association and its members over the last year?
Well, I think we had a great year in 2025, both at AASHTO as an organization, but also for our members in general within the state DOT community. I think in general it was a good year for transportation. For our members and for AASHTO, we were led last year by AASHTO President Garrett Eucalito, who's also the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Transportation. He had several issue areas that we focused on as an organization, but I think the top one was really safety. We've been dealing with a safety crisis here within the transportation community for a number of years, where we saw the number of fatalities and injuries spike during around the COVID time period. And we've really been struggling with trying to drive those numbers down. And that's made it a priority for several of the last AASHTO presidents. And Garrett really emphasized that in his year as AASHTO president. And one of the things that I think was a great success for us as an organization was the AASHTO Safety Summit. This was the third safety summit that we had. This year we were in New Orleans, or in 2025 we were in New Orleans. We had about 400 people there from not only around the state DOT community, but also from academia, from other partner organizations, to be able to come together and share best practices, to talk about some of the innovative ways that people are looking to address this safety crisis on our nation's highways. And, I think that this is something that we're going to be continuing moving forward. It's been great to be able to bring those different points of view together over the last 3 years as part of the Safety Summit. And I think that Garrett's focus on safety last year helped us really highlight that as an issue, and it helped that summit really be successful last year.
Did we intend for that when we first launched it in 2023 for that to be kind of an annual meeting, or was it just we saw the success of it and wanted to build on it?
I think that we really saw the success and the momentum that was generated from that first safety summit that we had in Kansas City and 3 years ago, and we said it's really hard not to do this again the next year. It was we had a great. We had essentially sold out the room. We didn't know what to expect in the first iteration of this. We had to start turning people away because we just couldn't fit people in the room. And I think that was a good signal to us that there's a need for this, that there's a desire for people to come together on an annual basis to talk about how important this issue is to the state DOT community and I think to the public as a whole.
Great. I mean, as someone who went for the first time, it's really an exciting meeting, and it brings together a lot of different people on so many different safety topics, too.
Absolutely.
Last year, we saw an administration change at the federal level, a transition that AASHTO and its members experience every 4 to 8 years. How would you say that transition has gone? Obviously, 1 year into it, they were still dealing with changes, obviously, as we always do. But how is that transition going from your perspective?
Well, I think it's going very well. You mentioned this is something that occurs every 4 or 8 years. And, there are always some bumps in the road in the beginning, the first few months or so. And we certainly had those. The great news, I think, for us as an organization, and I think for the state DOT community, is that every time we hit one of those bumps, we were able to pick up the phone and call somebody and talk to somebody on the other end to say, hey, you're trying to do this, and I'm not sure if it's having the intended effect. Let's have a conversation about how we can maybe figure out a better way to accomplish the goals you're looking to accomplish. So it really has been great to be able to have that relationship, to know that the lines of communication are always open, and for us to be able to talk through areas where we have concerns, but also areas where there's commonality. We have a lot of common goals, I think, with this administration and with USDOT in particular on transportation issues. And we've been able to work over the last 12 months with them to identify what those common goals are and to really be able to find ways to work together to achieve those goals. So it's been an interesting 12 months for us. Like I said, there certainly were some bumps in the road in the beginning, but we, I think, are really on a good track now. They have a lot of their leadership in place now at USDOT.
They've attended a lot of our meetings, too,
They've
correct?
attended a lot of our meetings. They've got obviously confirmed secretary there with Sean Duffy. One of his first speaking engagements as secretary last year was at our Washington briefing. I think that signals that USDOT sees AASHTO and the state DOT community as an important partner that they want to work with moving forward. We've got administrators now in place at FHWA, at FTA, at FRA, at NHTSA, and those have proven to be really good contacts and partners for us. We had 3 of those modal administrators come to the AASHTO annual meeting in Salt Lake City at the end of 2025 and speak to the board. It's the first time that I can remember us having 3 modal administrators at a single AASHTO meeting. And it was very well received by our members. Those administrators were very open and wanted to actually sit down with as many of the state DOTs individually as they could during their time in Salt Lake City. And I think, again, that shows kind of the openness of this administration to wanting to work with the state DOT community. And I think that's going to open up some opportunities for us moving forward. And we're excited about that.
So as we look to 2026, new year, what is AASHTO paying particular attention to? There's one big one, I think, that we're all looking at and paying attention to, but I wanted to hear what you think.
Well, I think that the big one, obviously, is surface transportation reauthorization. When the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed 5 years ago, it was an extremely important bill for the transportation community, but I think for the country as a whole. The federal government had been underinvesting in infrastructure for a number of years, and this was really the first time that we saw a big plus up in infrastructure funding at the federal level. So we're really looking forward over the next year to be able to work with Congress and with the administration and with our members to be able to push forward and try to get that next iteration of this bill in place before the IIJA expires, which that's September 30th of this year, 2026. So Congress is starting to lay the groundwork for that. There have been several hearings that were done last year. We were able to feature several AASHTO members, Garrett Eucalito, who is our president, Russell McMurray, who was our vice president last year, and Russell's our president this year, where I had the opportunity to testify on Capitol Hill to talk about the state DOT priorities in reauthorization and to talk about what AASHTO is hoping that Congress puts in that bill as they think about putting it together here in 2026.
Federal surface transportation reauthorization is vital to our members. What are the most important elements you think for reauthorization for our state DOT members?
Well, I think that the number one priority is focusing on formula funding that goes back to the state DOTs. That's really the bread and butter of this bill, and it has been for the last 30, 40 years. The core highway formula programs and the formula transit programs provide a level of consistency to state DOTs and the transit agencies so that they're able to plan the projects that they need to build over the next 5 or 6 years. And that level of predictability that comes with formula funding is something that gives us an advantage in being able to look out into the future and say, these are the major projects that we have in the queue. This is how much we can count on from the federal government to be able to get those projects done. In IIJA, there was a surge or an influx of money into discretionary programs. Larger amount of money than has ever been put before in discretionary dollars. And there certainly is going to be a role for discretionary programs in the future where the administration gets to solicit or ask for applications for projects and then essentially rate those applications and decide which projects get funding from a discretionary pot of money. But that's kind of a lumpy way to give money out. And the formula money is predictable. When the bill is passed, how much money you're going to get for 5 or 6 years. And that allows a state DOT or a transit agency to be able to plan over those 5 or 6 years because they know with certainty that those dollars are going to be there. The discretionary programs, I like to say, it's like playing the lottery. Mm-hmm. You put an application in every year and you hope that you're going to win the lottery, that they're going to select your project for discretionary funding. And there are some large projects out there that absolutely need that influx of discretionary dollars in order to get done. The projects that I like to point to, the Brent Spence Bridge between Kentucky and Ohio, the Gateway project between New York and New Jersey there, the rail project, transit project there. Those are projects that have been in the pipeline for a long time, but they were stalled. And without this discretionary money that goes above and beyond formula dollars, those projects probably weren't going to move. And so I do think that that these discretionary dollars play a role, but the focus of the next bill really does need to be on formula dollars. If you look at the statistics, and we're asking Congress and the administration to look at the data shows that the formula dollars that go to the state DOTs, that go to the transit agencies, those dollars are out in the communities, invested in projects within a year or two of them being provided to the state DOTs or the transit agencies. So
why is that?
Well, because again, it's the predictability, right? If a state knows that they're going to get $200 million from the federal government, they know that they can take that money and say, we're going to put it on these 5 projects. We're going to put it on these 10 projects. And they can set themselves up so that when the dollars are available in that fiscal year, they're ready to put them out on the street, within just a few months. With discretionary, you don't know. You've got to roll the dice, play the lottery, and hope that you win. Formula, it's coming. Mm-hmm. So if you think about how you budget maybe for your household, the formula dollars are your paycheck. You know they're coming every 2 weeks or every week or every month, however you get paid. But the discretionary dollars are like the lottery. You go in there, you do some scratch-offs, you hope you win. And if you do, great. Maybe you do something special with that. But you can't budget to pay your bills based on the lottery because you just don't know when you're going to win.
What else in reauthorization? Anything else you want to point to?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that there's an opportunity here to look at how can we deliver projects more efficiently, really focusing on project delivery, finding ways to streamline that process. We've made some progress here over the last 15 years. This seems to be a focus every time we take on reauthorization, and we're making some progress every iteration. Our hope is that this piece of legislation provides us the opportunity to take a big step forward and really cut through some of the bureaucratic red tape that's out there and to get these dollars invested in projects and get these projects completed as quickly as possible. There are ways to do that and still make sure we're safeguarding the environment and that we're doing right by the communities that we serve. State DOTs are great stewards of the environments that they're in. They want to make sure that they are doing right by the communities that they're working in.
They live there.
They live there. They want to make sure that they're invited back to do projects there in the future. So there's an opportunity here, I think, to delegate more authority to state DOTs and the states in general, give them the flexibility to manage those processes the way that they think is going to work best. And then hopefully we'll see some time savings and get some of these dollars out on the street quicker and get these projects completed earlier.
Great. You sort of touched on this a little bit. The AASHTO Board of Directors elected a new president at its annual meeting this year, as we do each year. That is Russell McMurray of the Georgia Department of Transportation. He highlighted reauthorization, safety, and project delivery as his emphasis areas for the year. How does AASHTO prioritize those emphasis areas that each president each year kind of highlights as things they want to tackle? How do we make sure that we, as an organization, pay attention to those and make kind of inroads on those issues as the year goes on?
Well, the good news here is that Russell's emphasis areas, I think, are priorities for every state DOT in the country. And they're priorities for many of the committees and councils that make up AASHTO as an organization. So, for example, he is focusing on safety. as Garrett did the year before him. And safety is a cross-cutting issue. It's not just our Committee on Safety, although I would say that they run point for us on that issue. It's also our Committee on Design and how we design our roadways, how we provide advice to engineers as they're looking at projects to make sure that they're being designed in a way that is the safest for all users of our transportation system. It's our Council on Active Transportation as we look at bike and pedestrian infrastructure and projects and policy. It's our Committee on Transportation System Operations as we look at how we operate our network, our transportation network as a whole. So we make sure that we get the information out on the emphasis areas to all of our committees and councils. We work with our AASHTO staff liaisons to make sure that they're aware of what the emphasis areas are for our president each year. And we ask them to do outreach with their committee and council members, the state DOT volunteers that are really the lifeblood of AASHTO as an organization, so that they're aware that this year the AASHTO president wants to focus on reauthorization, on safety, on improving project delivery, so that as those councils and committees structure their work plans for the year, they can take that into account. And again, the good news is that all of those areas really cut across a lot of the different committees and councils that AASHTO has.
Probably most of them in some way, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So it sounds like AASHTO will have a busy 2026 with just the things that you've already mentioned: reauthorization, safety, Russell's emphasis areas. Any other issues that you think we're paying close attention to in 2026?
Well, one of the things that we do on a regular basis is not just look at legislation, but look at the regulations and the guidance that come out from USDOT. And there have been some pieces of guidance that have been released over the last year that we're working with USDOT to make sure it's implemented in a way that is beneficial for everybody. One of them is the Build America, Buy America requirements. This is actually something that goes back a couple of administrations, is this focus to see how we can grow the domestic manufacturing capacity here in the U.S. And AASHTO is 100% behind the intent of Build America, Buy America. We want to make sure that we are growing the capacity here in the U.S. to make as many of the products and the materials that we use in transportation here domestically. And we want to make sure that as we're implementing these new rules on Build America, Buy America, that our states are able to have access to the materials and the products they need in a way that doesn't delay projects today. And we've been working with the administration on that. We're also working with state DOTs and industry to make sure that there's a way for us to know what is built in America and what's not built in America. And we're really leaning on one of our technical service programs, our product evaluation and audit program, to be able to use the database that they have so that industry can essentially self-certify that a product was made here in the U.S., provided as part of, or you can put it in our database, and then our state DOT members will have access to that database for those products to ensure that it is built in America or made in America.
Great.
And that does save time and save money so that each individual state doesn't have to go out and do that activity. We're doing it as a whole for the state DOT community.
Great. Anything else?
Another issue for state DOTs is artificial intelligence. How are we going to utilize AI moving forward? And how is AI impacting the day-to-day work for state DOTs? And this is an issue that every industry out there is grappling with, right? This is not something that is unique to the state DOT community or even transportation as a whole. So we've been working with our members to try to figure out what are they doing to incorporate AI into some of the work that they're doing? How are they working to make sure that their workforce is prepared to be able to utilize AI where it makes sense? We did a survey at the end of last year where we asked people within our transportation system operations community how they're utilizing AI, where there are challenges that they're facing with the use of AI. And we had a really great conversation at our AASHTO annual meeting in Salt Lake City at the end of 2025 with our AASHTO board of directors on AI. Mark Williams, who is now our AASHTO vice president from Texas, did a great job of moderating a discussion at the board where we talked about the impact of AI on the work that state DOTs are doing, where the state DOT CEOs were able to really talk about where some states are really leaning into AI and where some states are maybe stepping back a little bit and saying, we're going to see how this works out here before we jump in with both feet. So I think that's going to be something for us to work on here in the next year, is really trying to bring the state DOT community together whenever we can to talk about where AI is helping them maybe gain some efficiencies and where there still seems to be some reluctance to jump in with both feet. So that's something I think we're going to be looking at in 2026 as well.
Yeah, just like you said, like everybody else.
Yes.
All right. Well, it sounds like we have a busy year ahead at AASHTO and an exciting one. But we will catch up with you soon for another update, Jim. Thank you for sitting down to chat with me today.
Great. Thanks for having me.